You know what it feels like to work hard and still be overlooked, to be useful but not respected, to be tired but not powerful. That is what happens when your effort creates value for someone else, but no leverage for you. The lie was that hard work speaks for itself. It does not. Hard work only speaks when it is framed, owned, measured, and positioned. A man selling a cheap logo is selling labor. A man selling brand identity is selling recognition, trust, memory, and market position. The first man gets treated like a pair of hands. The second gets treated like a strategic mind. The difference is not always talent. Sometimes the same designer, with the same tools, the same eye, and the same hours, can be paid like a disposable worker or respected like an expert. Why? Because one sells effort, the other sells consequence. A logo says, "I made something." A brand identity says, "I understand how people recognize you, trust you, remember you, and choose you." That is leverage. And this is not only true for a single man trying to sell his skill, it is true at the level of empires. Look at NVIDIA. The power was not in chasing hype after artificial intelligence became the loudest word in the room. The power was in controlling infrastructure before the world fully understood how badly it would need it. When the crowd started running toward artificial intelligence, NVIDIA was not merely shouting with the crowd. It owned a road the crowd needed to travel on. That is the difference between noise and infrastructure. Noise begs for attention. Infrastructure collects power when attention arrives. Most men are still living as noise. They work. They help. They produce. They stay late. They solve problems. They make other people look competent. But they do not own the proof. They do not control the frame. They do not build assets. They do not create distribution. They do not know how to negotiate from evidence. So their effort disappears into someone else's system. Then they wonder why nobody respects them. But respect does not come from effort alone. Respect comes when your effort becomes difficult to ignore, difficult to replace, and expensive to lose. This is the hidden mechanism behind why so many hard-working men stay poor, tired, and invisible. They confuse being needed with having power. Those are not the same thing. A machine can be needed. A servant can be needed. A desperate employee can be needed. Being needed only means someone benefits from your presence. Power begins when they must consider the cost of losing you. That is why hard work without leverage becomes a trap. The harder you work inside another man's structure, without building proof, ownership, positioning, or bargaining power, the more valuable you become to him, and the less free you become for yourself. You are not lazy. That is not the accusation. The accusation is colder. You may be disciplined in the wrong direction. You may be loyal to systems that only reward you enough to keep you useful, but never enough to make you dangerous. You may be building strength without building position. And strength without position is just exhaustion with better posture. This is why the old advice is incomplete. Work hard. Be patient. Stay humble. Let your results speak. It sounds noble. It sounds clean. It sounds respectable. But in the real world, results do not speak unless someone translates them. Results do not travel unless someone distributes them. Results do not protect you unless someone documents them. Results do not raise your price unless someone positions them. And if you are not the one doing that, someone else will. Someone else will take your output and turn it into their reputation. Someone else will take your execution and turn it into their authority. Someone else will take your skill and wrap it in their brand. Then you will look at them and think they are luckier, louder, more connected, or more favored by life. Sometimes they are none of those things. Sometimes they simply understand power better than you. Machiavelli understood something most men are too sentimental to accept. Power does not reward innocence. Power rewards perception, timing, position, and control. The world does not ask who suffered the most. It asks who controls the thing others need. This is where most ambitious men lose years. They think the game is moral. They think if they suffer quietly, someone will notice. They think if they are useful enough, someone will reward them. They think if they become excellent in silence, the world will eventually bow. But the world does not bow to silent excellence. It uses it. Then it forgets it. There is a brutal difference between doing valuable work and becoming a valuable person in the eyes of the market. Doing valuable work means you can produce. Being valuable in the eyes of the market means your value can be seen, proven, trusted, remembered, and bought again. That is why proof matters. If your work cannot be measured, it can be dismissed. If your results cannot be shown, they can be stolen. If your contribution cannot be named, it can be absorbed into the team, the company, the brand, the leader, or the system. This is how men become ghosts inside their own lives. They were there. They helped. They carried weight. They fixed the problem. They saved the project. But when the reward came, someone else had the language, the confidence, the visibility, and the authority to claim the room. Hard work is labor. Proof is evidence. Positioning is perception. Leverage is the force multiplier. Ownership is the escape. You do not escape invisibility by working more. You escape invisibility by making your work impossible to misunderstand. A man with no proof has to explain himself. A man with proof makes the room explain why he is not being paid more. That is a different kind of power. And this is where your first transformation begins. Stop asking, why do they not see how hard I work? That question belongs to a man still waiting for permission. Ask a sharper question. What have I built that forces my value to become visible? Because if your value depends on someone being fair, you are already weak. Fairness is not a strategy. Hope is not a structure. Patience is not leverage. You need evidence. You need assets. You need assets. You need a frame. You need a position. You need a way to turn effort into something that compounds after the effort is finished. A man who works for hours and leaves nothing behind but fatigue is still rented. A man who works for hours and leaves behind proof, systems, offers, relationships, distribution, and assets is building territory. This is why two men can spend the same year working hard and end in completely different places. One becomes more tired, the other becomes more expensive. One becomes more useful, the other becomes more dangerous. One becomes trusted with more labor, the other becomes trusted with more authority. The difference is not just effort, it is what the effort attaches to. If effort attaches to another man's ownership, it feeds him. If effort attaches to your own proof, your own reputation, your own offer, your own system, and your own distribution, it starts feeding you. That is leverage. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. You will start noticing it everywhere. The employee who does the work, but never documents the result. The freelancer who has skill, but no positioning. The creator who has insight, but no distribution. The entrepreneur who has a good product, but no trust. The quiet man who has discipline, but no proof. The talented man who waits to be discovered, while a less talented man packages himself, speaks clearly, shows evidence, and takes the opportunity. This is not injustice in the way weak men describe it. This is the market revealing its nature. The market does not reward what is hidden. It rewards what is legible. It rewards what is trusted. It rewards what is positioned. It rewards what can be understood quickly by people who are too busy, too selfish, or too distracted to study your soul. So, stop expecting the world to investigate your potential. Package it. Prove it. Position it. Negotiate from it. If you are serious about changing your position, not just consuming ideas that make you feel temporarily powerful, I have a direct invitation for you. You may be watching many videos. You may be collecting harsh truths. You may even feel sharper after hearing them. But if nothing in your life changes, then information has become another form of entertainment. Inside Patreon, I go deeper into the unfiltered material that cannot always be shaped for the public surface. The principles, breakdowns, and private lessons are for men who are not here to be comforted, but to be rebuilt. If you continue only consuming and never applying, you will keep mistaking awareness for progress. The decision is yours. Now understand the next layer. Leverage is not one thing you add to your life like a decoration. Leverage is the structure that decides whether your work dies when you stop moving. If you work 1 hour and the result ends when the hour ends, you are selling time. If you work 1 hour and the result becomes proof, content, a case study, an offer, a system, a product, a relationship, or an asset, you are building leverage. This is why ownership matters. Because the man who owns nothing must keep proving himself from zero. Every day, every room, every negotiation, every opportunity. He arrives empty-handed, hoping people remember his value. But memory is weak. Evidence is stronger. Ownership is stronger than evidence. Distribution is stronger than ownership when you know how to use it. A man with skill and no distribution is waiting outside the gate. A man with distribution can bring attention to whatever he builds. A man with ownership can keep the upside. A man with proof can defend his price. A man with positioning can make the same work appear more valuable because people finally understand what it does for them. That is why the cheap logo and the full brand identity are not merely different products. They are different frames of power. The cheap logo says, "Pay me for a task." The brand identity says, "Pay me for the way your market will see you." One is effort, the other is leverage. And until you understand that difference, you will keep selling the lowest visible layer of your value. You will sell hours instead of outcomes. You will sell tasks instead of transformation. You will sell labor instead of judgment. You will sell obedience instead of strategy. And then you will resent the people who priced you cheaply, even though you taught them how to see you, because the world often accepts the price you signal, not always, but often enough to ruin a man who refuses to position himself. A man who says, "I can do anything," sounds available. A man who says, "I solved this specific painful problem, and here is the proof," sounds expensive. That is why your work must become evidence, not emotion, not intention, not private suffering. Evidence. What did you improve? What did you build? What did you reduce? What did you increase? What changed because you were there? What would have failed without you? What can you show? What can you repeat? What can you teach? What can you sell? These are not motivational questions. These are power questions. Because the moment you can answer them clearly, you stop begging to be understood. You begin controlling the frame. And the man who controls the frame controls how his value enters the mind of others. And once you control the frame, you no longer enter the world as a man asking to be noticed. You enter as a man whose value has shape. This is where most men must kill the old belief. The old belief says, "If I become good enough, they will see me." The stronger belief says, "If I become good enough but invisible, I will be used by men who are better positioned than me." That is not cynicism. That is strategy. You do not need to become loud. You do not need to become fake. You do not need to become a clown begging for attention. But you do need to become legible. You need to make your value readable to the people, markets, rooms, and opportunities that decide your future. There is dignity in silence. But there is danger in invisibility. Silence can be strength when it is chosen by a man who already has position. Silence is weakness when it belongs to a man waiting for the world to discover him. The world is not searching for you. It is busy. It is distracted. It is selfish. It is moving toward whatever appears useful, trusted, urgent, and profitable. If you want your work to matter, you must attach it to proof. If you want your proof to matter, you must attach it to positioning. If you want your positioning to matter, you must attach it to distribution. If you want your distribution to matter, you must attach it to ownership. That is the ladder. Not effort alone. Effort is the ground. Leverage is the height. This is why documentation is not a small habit. It is a weapon. Document your wins. Not to brag, not to perform, not to seek applause from strangers. Document, because undocumented value becomes easy to erase. When you improve something, record it. When you solve a problem, write it down. When you create a result, capture the before and after. When someone benefits from your work, save the evidence. When you learn a lesson through pain, turn it into a principle. When you repeat a process successfully, turn it into a system. A man with documented wins does not walk into negotiation with emotion. He walks in with reality. And reality, when presented cleanly, has force. Without documentation, you say, "I have worked hard." With documentation, you say, "Here is what changed because of me." Those are not the same sentence. The first asks for sympathy, the second creates pressure. This is why a portfolio matters, even outside creative work. A portfolio is not only for designers, writers, developers, or builders. A portfolio is proof of pattern. It says, "This is not luck. This is what I repeatedly produce." A man with a portfolio becomes harder to dismiss because his value no longer lives only in memory. It lives in evidence. And once your evidence exists, you must learn to sell. Many men hate this part because they were trained to think selling is beneath them. They think selling is manipulation. They think selling is dirty. They think if something is truly valuable, people should just understand it. That belief keeps skilled men poor. Selling is not begging. Selling is translation. Selling is the act of connecting your value to another person's pain, desire, fear, ambition, or outcome. If you cannot sell, you force other people to guess why you matter. And most people will not guess generously. They will guess cheaply. They will reduce you to the easiest category they understand. Designer, employee, assistant, editor, worker, guy who helps, guy who is useful, guy who is reliable. Useful is not enough. Reliable is not enough. Hardworking is not enough. Those words make people comfortable using you. They do not automatically make people respect your power. To become powerful, you must be able to say what you do, why it matters, what it changes, who it helps, what it costs to ignore it, and why you are not interchangeable. That is positioning. Positioning is not pretending to be greater than you are. Positioning is refusing to let people define you by the lowest layer of your value. The designer is not selling shapes and colors. He is selling recognition. The strategist is not selling advice. He is selling clarity that prevents expensive mistakes. The creator is not selling videos. He is selling attention, trust, identity, and movement. The employee is not selling hours. He is selling outcomes that protect or grow the business. The man is not selling obedience. He is selling judgment. And judgment is more valuable than labor because judgment decides where labor should go. This is the next identity shift. You must stop seeing yourself only as a worker. You must become a builder of assets. A skill is powerful, but a skill alone still requires your constant presence. An offer turns skill into something people can understand and buy. A system turns repeated effort into repeatable results. An asset keeps carrying value when you are not actively pushing. Distribution brings attention to what you own. Ownership lets you keep the upside. This is the path out of being rented. If you work but do not document results, your value can be stolen. If you work but do not learn sales, someone else translates your value. If you work but do not build assets, you stay rented. If you work but do not create distribution, you stay dependent on people who already have attention. If you work but do not negotiate with evidence, you keep asking for fairness from people who benefit from your silence. And understand this clearly. Negotiation without evidence is pleading dressed in confidence. Negotiation with evidence is different. It says, I am not asking you to believe in me. I am showing you the cost of underestimating me. That is why the man with proof negotiates differently. He is calmer. He does not over-explain. He does not perform desperation. He does not need to inflate himself because the evidence carries weight. He knows what changed because he was there. He knows what he can repeat. He knows what the market would lose if he left. He knows where his leverage begins. And if he does not have leverage yet, he stops lying to himself and begins building it. That is the discipline most men avoid. They want the feeling of power before the structure of power. They want respect before proof. They want freedom before ownership. They want status before positioning. They want opportunity before distribution. But reality does not bend to desire. Reality bends to structure. A man becomes powerful when his value no longer depends on one person's mood, one company's approval, one gatekeeper's permission, or one audience's attention. That is why you build assets. That is why you turn skills into offers. That is why you turn offers into systems. That is why you turn systems into reputation. That is why you turn reputation into bargaining power. And that is why you stop worshipping hard work as if it is holy by itself. Hard work is necessary. But hard work is not sacred. Hard work can build your freedom, or it can build your cage. The question is not whether you are working hard. The question is what your hard work is becoming. Is it becoming proof? Is it becoming ownership? Is it becoming distribution? Is it becoming a stronger position? Is it becoming an asset? Or is it becoming exhaustion that disappears at the end of every week? This is the point where a man has to become brutally honest. Some of you are not underpaid because the world is evil. Some of you are underpaid because the world cannot see the value you claim to have. Some of you are not ignored because people hate you. Some of you are ignored because your value has no signal. Some of you are not trapped because you lack discipline. Some of you are trapped because your discipline has been feeding structures you do not own. That should disturb you. Good, let it disturb you. A truth that does not disturb you cannot rebuild you. If you are serious about becoming more than a consumer of harsh ideas, then take this further. If you are watching, learning, nodding, and still living the same week over and over again, the problem is not that you need another comfortable lesson. The problem is that you need pressure, structure, and unfiltered principles that force application. Inside Patreon, I share deeper material for men who want the private edge, not the public surface. If you keep consuming without changing your structure, you will stay informed and powerless. If you choose to build differently, you begin separating yourself from the men who only watch. The decision is yours. Now return to the central law. Effort without leverage becomes charity. Not because work is useless. Work is necessary. Discipline is necessary. Skill is necessary. But work only becomes power when it produces proof, ownership, distribution, or bargaining power. Otherwise, it becomes a donation to someone else's future. You give your hours. You give your focus. You give your energy. You give your intelligence. You give your loyalty. And in return, you receive enough approval to keep giving more. That is not power. That is managed usefulness. A man who only works becomes useful. A man who turns work into leverage becomes difficult to replace. A man who becomes difficult to replace starts negotiating with a different posture. A man who owns assets starts thinking with a different time horizon. A man who controls distribution stops begging the gate. A man who has proof stops hoping to be believed. A man who understands positioning stops letting others name him. This is the colder path. Not louder, not easier, not more glamorous, colder. Because it requires you to stop romanticizing exhaustion. Many men are addicted to the moral comfort of being tired. They think fatigue proves virtue. They think struggle proves destiny. They think being overlooked makes them noble. No, being overlooked is not a crown. It is a signal. It is telling you that your work has no frame, no proof, no distribution, no ownership, or no leverage. Do not worship the wound. Study the mechanism. Then change your position. From this point forward, do not ask, "Am I working hard enough?" Ask, "What is my work building that cannot be taken from me?" Ask, "Where is my proof?" Ask, "What do I own?" Ask, "Who sees my value?" Ask, "Can I explain my outcome in one clear sentence?" Ask, "What asset remains after the effort is finished?" Ask, "What would make me harder to ignore, harder to replace, and more expensive to lose?" That is how a man stops waiting for permission. That is how he kills the need to be validated. That is how he becomes calm. Because he is no longer hoping the world will finally notice his pain. He is building evidence the world must deal with. The old version of you wanted someone to recognize how much you carried. The stronger version of you builds so clearly that recognition becomes a consequence, not a request. That is the shift. Naive men work and wait. Strategic men work and position. Weak men hope to be chosen. Powerful men build leverage until ignoring them has a cost. So do not leave this as an idea. Choose one result you have created and document it. Choose one skill and turn it into a clear offer. Choose one repeated process and turn it into a system. Choose one proof point and build a portfolio around it. Choose one place where you have been useful but invisible and make the value visible. Because the world does not owe you discovery, it responds to force, not always physical force, often structural force. Proof is force. Ownership is force. Distribution is force. Distribution is force. Positioning is force. Leverage is force. And once your work has force behind it, you stop being merely hard-working. You become undeniable. Subscribe if you want power, not just exhaustion.